Have you ever gotten super into like a new hobby? Like maybe you're trying to bake sourdough bread.
Oh, yeah.
And you're reading every blog post.
Every recipe.
Watching YouTube videos, yeah.
Totally.
But then when it comes to actually making the bread,
right,
it's like
doesn't
turn out right.
Yeah.
You've got all this knowledge.
Okay.
But
you're missing something.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we're looking at today in this deep dive.
Okay.
We're diving into how early Western scholars approached Buddhism.
Interesting.
And how in their quest to understand this ancient tradition, they were so focused on the philosophy, they almost missed the whole point of the practice.
Fascinating how often that happens.
Isn't it?
Like we see that all the time, not just academics studying Buddhism, but like in our own lives too.
All the time.
We get so caught up in information gathering, we forget about the experience part.
Right. Exactly. It's like trying to understand what it's like to ride a bike by just reading a physics textbook.
Right.
You can learn all about balance and force, but you won't feel that wind in your hair until you actually get on the bike.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where these early scholars, they were so fixated on these very specific concepts like nirvana.
Right.
Which, for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar, that's like the ultimate goal in Buddhism.
It is.
A state of complete liberation.
Yeah.
But instead of approaching nirvana as a lived experience, something to be realized through practice,
right,
they treated it like a dictionary definition.
A purely intellectual puzzle to solve instead of a path to walk. Like, the source material points to scholars like the Rhys Davids and Strzelecki, who were so focused on defining single core concepts of Buddhist thought like dharmas, which are essentially like the building blocks of reality in Buddhism, that they missed how those concepts fit into the actual practice.
It's like they were trying to understand sourdough bread by analyzing its chemical composition.
Right.
You got to actually take a bite.
You do.
To get the full experience.
It's that.
And this source material drives this point home with this great quote from this scholar, Lavelle-Poussin.
Okay.
And he was studying nirvana. Again, this ultimate goal for Buddhists. But he openly admitted that while it was clearly like super important to Buddhists, he is, as a scholar, it was just an object of archaeological interest.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
It's like saying I'm fascinated by the idea of this ancient artifact, but I'm not interested in what it was used for.
Exactly. Like they're studying the rule book without ever watching the game.
Yeah.
Analyzing the recipe without tasting the bread. And that's what we're going to unpack in this deep dive.
Okay.
Why that approach just doesn't cut it when it comes to something like Buddhism.
I'm interested to hear this.
Okay, so it hasn't been all like stale textbooks and missed opportunities.
Yeah.
The source material also points to like a more recent shift in how Western scholars are approaching Buddhism.
Okay.
They're realizing that to truly understand this tradition, they can't just stay stuck in their heads.
They got to get some experience.
Exactly. And so there's been a real surge in what we could call practical Buddhist studies. And so scholars are paying more attention to the how of Buddhism, the actual methods and experiences described in texts on Zen, mindfulness, and tantric practices.
Interesting.
So they're finally stepping into the kitchen, trying their hand at the recipe.
I like that.
And that's led to some really cool discoveries.
Oh, yeah.
One example that I thought was really cool was the work of D.T. Suzuki.
Okay.
And he was really instrumental in introducing Zen Buddhism to the West.
He was.
And so Zen is all about this direct experience.
Right.
It's about silencing that mind chatter and connecting with a deeper sense of being.
Yes.
But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really interesting. The source material points out that Zen, by its very nature, it challenges that purely intellectual approach.
Yeah, it's like you can't think your way to enlightenment. You have to live your way there.
Yes, and the source material takes us even deeper into the world of Buddhist texts.
Okay.
And it draws this really cool parallel
to
how scientists approach knowledge.
Okay.
When you think about Buddhist texts, you've got like a whole spectrum.
Yeah.
You've got these really concise root texts, which are like foundational formulas. For those who are already steeped in the tradition.
I see.
And then you have these expansive commentaries written by generations of scholars who are like unpacking and interpreting those core texts.
I like that analogy because it highlights that, like, learning, whether we're talking about a spiritual tradition or a scientific field,
Right.
it's not about just cramming information.
Yeah.
It's about navigating different levels of understanding, building upon foundational knowledge, and engaging with the material in a way that resonates with our experience.
And that brings us back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
What's something you're trying to learn right now? Maybe a new language?
Oh, yeah.
Or a musical instrument?
Well, like learning a new skill at work, even.
Yeah, totally.
Even something like gardening, you can read all about it.
Right.
But until you get your hands dirty,
exactly.
you're missing something.
Yeah, and that's what this whole deep dive is about.
Right.
It's about how we learn anything.
Yeah, the source material really drives home this idea that to truly get something, whether it's Zen or baseball,
right,
you need the intellectual framework, but also the lived experience.
I have both.
You need both. It's bridging that gap.
I love that.
Between a head and heart.
Because I think so often we get caught in the trap of thinking that just knowing something is the same as understanding it.
Exactly.
And we cram all this information in our brain.
Yeah, it becomes trivia.
But we don't take the time to make it meaningful.
Yeah, you're not embodying it.
Yeah.
It's not part of you.
And this is what I think is so cool about what the source material is talking about.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to learn as a more holistic endeavor.
Yes.
Where we're engaging not just our minds.
Yes.
But our bodies, our senses.
Your whole being.
Yes, our whole being.
In the process.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, here's something I want you to think about. What if, instead of just being like passive consumers of information, we approach learning with this active curiosity?
Yeah.
Like we can make mistakes, play,
experiment,
and learn with our whole selves.
I love that.
And who knows what amazing insights we might find.
Totally.
If this sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to explore further.
Yeah.
Read the source material.
Absolutely.
Maybe try a new practice.
Try something new.
And approach your own learning journey with a fresh perspective.
It's all connected.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.